the fructose molecule actually shuts down the ghrelin and leptin mechanism, which is the hormones that regulate your appetite and tell you when you're full. We don't have an off switch or a full switch for fructose.
Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast with Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
Why is quitting sugar one of the best things you can do for your health? And how do you do it? Sarah Wilson, founder of iQuitSugar.com, is our guest today. And quitting sugar isn't the only big challenge she's taken on. Look for her latest book, This One Wild and Precious Life. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by our friends Juliet and Kelly Starrett at The Ready State. Get a free trial and then save 10% for life by using the code SPARTAN10 when you register at thereadystate.com.
So you quit sugar.
Yeah, I quit sugar exactly 10 years ago, actually. So it was 10 years ago, and it was an experiment that I started. It worked, so I just kept going and going and going.
How hard was it to quit sugar? I mean, I'm trying to get my kids off sugar. I try to tell everybody I know sugar's no good. I fight with myself over, when you're hungry and there's nothing around, you're in the airport, and I go grab a Cliff Bar or something. I'm mad at myself. Like, how'd you do it?
It was hard, and I've got a autoimmune disease, and I reckon there'd be a fair few of your listeners who have got an autoimmune disease because they're rampant at the moment. I have Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid disease. So I got really sick in my mid-30s, and I couldn't find anything that could work to get myself back on track. So I did this experiment. And I'd read a lot of science on it, and I just thought I'd give it a go. Now, the human mind is such that we do not do stuff if we're told to do it, like do not touch wet paint. All we want to do is touch it, right? So my approach has always been to work with abundance. So instead of just quitting sugar, I instead switched the mindset to what you could eat. And so it's almost like I crowded out the bad stuff with so much good stuff. And I think it probably fits in with your philosophy, Joe. Like, I ate good quality protein, good quality fats, and I focused on that. And then that did make it easy. The other thing that I did was I treated it as an experiment. So I sort of say to people, try it for 2 weeks. The program is actually 8 weeks, and it takes 8 weeks or 60 days to reverse both the mental habit or mental addiction, but also the physical addiction, so the hormonal dysregulation. So I say try it for 2 weeks. Now, the best thing that happens at the 2 week mark, and I reckon we can do most things for 2 weeks. After that, it gets too exhausting. Like, any diet fails after a couple of weeks. But what happens when you quit sugar? First of all, you start to have a lot more energy, and so it becomes addictive, right? The second thing is your skin clears up and our vanity takes over. So wrinkles and pimples just back away, and it's really noticeable. So that's one of the first things that changes is the skin, the collagen and the elastin in the skin. The other thing that really shifts is our sense of taste, and that takes about 2 weeks as well. So after 2 weeks, when you go and eat a chocolate bar that you used to eat every day beforehand, it'll be too sweet for you. So you've already dialed down your sweet sort of addiction. It also helps, Joe, to really know what sugars are the ones that are going to make a big impact. So one of the things I say is if you're starting out for the first time with all of this, just quit all liquid sugars. So juice. And juice is regarded as a liquid sugar, just like, fizzy drink, or you call it soda. It's regarded as a added sugar now by the WHO. And I've been saying that for 10 years. And of course, people thought I was mad 10 years ago. But it's essentially just the sugar from the fruit and not much else. Sure, it's got some vitamins and so on, but I'd say drink water, take a vitamin tablet, or eat some vegetables, So if you cut out that kind of sugar, then you're cutting out a huge chunk. So let's say a glass of apple juice or a glass of Coca-Cola, this big, contains around about 7 teaspoons of added sugar. Now, the WHO now says that we can handle 6 to 9 teaspoons of added sugar in an entire day. For children, it's about 3. So when you drink a glass of apple juice or a glass of Coke, like a standard Coke can, you've gone over. You've gone over your entire daily limit. So cut out liquid sugar. And there's a couple other things you can do as well. And then it means that if you do sort of eat an occasional treat and so on, it's not going to be a huge problem. But the 8-week program is definitely about doing abstinence for 8 weeks, recalibrating your appetite system, your leptin and your ghrelin, so that you're eating as your body is meant to eat. You eat like a kid again, where you get hungry and you get full, because we've lost that mechanism, and it's because of sugar.
I mean, 100 years ago, we ate very little sugar. Today, as a global species, we are consuming sugar at a ridiculous rate.
Yeah. So we're eating around about, and this is, I think, a very conservative estimate. I think it's way more, around about 60 kilos of sugar a year. But I think that, yeah, it'd be way more than that. And I would say the average person is probably, if you think about it, I added up the sugar I was eating before I quit sugar. And I was a healthy eater. I was the editor of Cosmopolitan, or the editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine. I was virtuous and trying to be healthy and, you know, all of that kind of thing, have good skin, so I look good in my editorial photos, whatever. And I added it up, and I was consuming around about 30 teaspoons of added sugar a day, given that I should be consuming 6. And that's how much I consume now. So I have a little bit of dark chocolate. I'll have some, you know, some dried fruit during the day, just a little bit. So it's very little now, but back then it was 30 teaspoons. And I would say that would be what a lot of people are consuming without even realizing. So it was in low-fat yogurt. So low-fat dairy products generally have added sugar. Okay, so because it replaces the fullness of mouth texture and taste that is removed when you take out the fat from dairy products. So really look out for low-fat products. They end up being more fattening because of the extra sugar. So I was eating low-fat yogurt on muesli or granola that had lots of dried fruit and maybe some maple syrup through it. Then I was eating like a muffin mid-morning because I was going on this roller coaster, this sugar roller coaster. Mid-morning, I needed something. So I'd sort of kid myself that my granola bar, my Cliff bar, my muffin was kind of a healthy option. It's full of dates, you know, natural sugar. Dates are 70% fructose. Now, everyday table sugar or high fructose corn syrup is 50%. So dates are off the scale. So is agave, which a lot of people think is a natural sugar. And I'm like, what's so unnatural about sugarcane? You know, like agave is more natural. Maple syrup that you buy in a supermarket is no more natural or less natural than sugar. So we convince ourselves of all of these things. And then I was eating, you know, maybe a banana, which is really high in sugar. And I have no problems with whole fruit. But if you're eating the really sugary fruits, like the high fructose fruits, like watermelon, grapes, banana, you're getting it probably a little too much. And then I was needing dessert after dinner. And I remember thinking, Joe, what is there to live for if I can't have something sweet after my dinner? Like, I remember thinking that way, and the idea of quitting sugar just terrified me because of that. And everybody has their little thing. It might be their afternoon snack, or it might be, there's usually something that people just go, can't cope with that. And a lot of people was like, what about when I'm out at dinner and everyone orders dessert, you know? So there's little stuck points. And when I was developing the program, I would go through all of those and have techniques to overcome them.
I found for me, I don't know if you recommend this or not, but I found for me, if I just stay away from things that are sweet, even though I like apples and like that sweet thing triggers me wanting more sweet things. And if I just stay away from them, and this is going to sound terrible to most people listening or watching, but like, I like eggs. I probably shouldn't eat as many eggs as I have, but I'll have my, let's say, 2 eggs over easy in the morning with a salad. Yeah. That's ridiculous, right? Everybody wants it with toast and this and that. But if I have it with a salad, I actually get full, and I then don't crave other things, right? Like, but if I break one day and I'm like, you know what? I got to go back to my Italian roots. I'm going to have some gluten-free pasta and this thing and that thing. Then the wheels fall off. Then I want, like, it triggers other things.
No, it's a really legitimate point and reaction, because sugar in particular, less so carbs, but of course, if you're eating a lot of carbs, they break down and operate much like a sugar in our bodies. And because we're such a carb-heavy world, that can cause problems and trigger the same reaction. But what fructose does, and I'll just, if you've got a moment, I'll break down some of the science on this. So fructose, there's nothing really inherently wrong with fructose, but the thing is, it's a molecule that, as you say, 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, didn't really exist in nature all that much. So when we were cavemen, we wandered around and there was a bit of honey and maybe some berries. And we were programmed to be obsessed by anything with fructose in it because it was quite rare. Now, the reason for that is that fructose is actually the fastest, most effective source of fat on the planet. So if we want to get body fat really quickly, we eat sugar. Now, of course, nobody tells us that these days, but our bodies knew that back in the caveman days. So back then, to come across a berry bush or a beehive, we were programmed to be obsessed by it. So because it was such a good source of fat and we needed it back then, we were also programmed to have no off switch for it, right? So the fructose molecule actually shuts down the ghrelin and leptin mechanism, which is the hormones that regulate your appetite and tell you when you're full. We don't have an off switch or a full switch for fructose. And anyone who's kind of had one scoop of ice cream and had to go back for more and can actually find themselves eating that much, or anyone who's eaten a Coke, a mega-sized Coke this big, can you imagine drinking that much yogurt with, good quality fats and everything in it? No. It's impossible because we have an off switch for fat. We don't have it for fructose. Now, they've also shown that when we eat fructose, it actually programs us to eat more of everything. So I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. When we eat a bit of sugar, it actually programs to go and hunt out more. Wow, there's some sugar here. We need to binge on this because we don't know when we're going to get the next fix. We have not evolved that much from 10,000 years ago, we just haven't. We've still got the same metabolic mechanisms. So we still behave like the cavemen and women, except we've got sugar just drowning us, right? We don't even have to go and put some physical effort into getting it, like our forebears used to have to go and hunt for it and climb over mountains to get to a beehive, These days it's just there and it's ready, and of course we metabolize it in the same way. So you're absolutely right. It does trigger this desire to go and out and get more of it because we think, oh my God, it's here somewhere. We're going to have to gorge.
It literally changed my life when I just eliminated all of it from my life and switched to things that sound boring and you wouldn't want to eat. But like I tell people, you could eat as much salad as you want. As long as you don't turn your salad into a pizza, you could have 55 pounds of salad. You won't do it because you have an off switch, right?
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly how our bodies work. And the way I find this is really helpful for people psychologically to think about it, when we eat sugar and really low quality carbs, like your pizzas and, so on, what we're doing is we're throwing like kerosene or like paper onto our metabolic fire.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by our friends Juliet and Kelly Starrett at The Ready State. In case you don't know Kelly, he's a doctor of physical therapy and the world's leading mobility coach. In fact, Kelly has worked with everyone from Olympic gold medalists and NFL quarterbacks to UFC champions and Navy SEALs. And he's given Joe De Sena a little advice too. We're happy to announce that now anyone can experience what it's like to work with Kelly, thanks to his virtual mobility coach platform. With VMC, it's like you have a virtual Kelly Starrett in your pocket. Whether you want to speed up your recovery after a hard training session so you're ready to go again the next day, improve your range of motion to help reduce the risk of injury, get targeted warm-up mobilizations to help you get around the most difficult obstacles in training or during a race, or just get the most out of every workout, Virtual Mobility Coach can help. In fact, nearly 17,000 everyday athletes trust VMC with their mobility training and recovery. And now we can give you a chance to join them with a special deal just for Spartan Up listeners. Right now, you can try VMC totally free for 2 whole weeks without paying a penny. And after you get your free trial, save 10% off your membership for life. To claim this deal, go to thereadystate.com and use the code SPARTAN10 when you register for your free trial. That's thereadystate.com and the code SPARTAN10. You'll get 2 weeks to try VMC for free and see if it's right for you. And then, with this special deal, you'll save 10% on your membership for life. But hurry, the deal expires June 1st. So one more time, that's thereadystate.com and the code SPARTAN10.
The way I find this is really helpful for people psychologically to think about it, when we eat sugar and really low quality carbs, like your pizzas and, so on, what we're doing is we're throwing like kerosene or like paper onto our metabolic fire. So it means that we're constantly going like this, and you've got to constantly stoke the fire. You've got to throw on more paper or more twigs. And that's why, that whole snacking culture that started in the early 90s, it's terrible because it facilitates that sort of stoking of the fire with these cheap fuels. When you eat a proper meal like your eggs and salad with proper protein, good quality fat, etc., it's like putting a log on your fire, a nice, big, sturdy, dense log. And you put it on first thing in the morning and it burns for 4 or 5 hours. You get to lunch and then your natural appetite mechanisms kick in. Your ghrelin makes you hungry, and then you go, another log on the fire. So you're attending to it 3 times and with really good quality, dense fuel. And I find that actually gets people thinking about it quite differently. And that's why, for instance, when you eat your salad and your eggs, you're satiated. And people go, it's boring. But you know what it's doing? It's just like this other kind of mindset kicks in because people go, I won't be happy with that. I want my granola. I want my comfort food. That makes me feel good. When you start eating like that, you actually realize the hormones take care of themselves. And they make you feel good. You're not even thinking about granola or chocolate or muffins, You are getting on with the rest of your life.
Eat to live as opposed to live to eat. I grew up in an Italian household where it was just all we did was talk about food. Everything was food, 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 food. I have a buddy of mine, Cal Fussman. We did this little documentary together. I called it Exit Strategy because, what's your exit strategy in life? How do you want to leave the planet? You want to leave it soon? You want to leave it fast? And he said, Joe, I had ice cream with Mikhail Gorbachev. And I remember that. I just love to have my vanilla ice cream. And that's what it is, isn't it? We remember the moments that are adjacent to that sugar high, those twigs burning, right? We remember sitting around that fire. And we got to change that narrative. We got to change that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be draconian, and you don't have to treat it like a diet. It's just that once you start eating these different types of foods, and it's pretty easy, if you're having dinner, you're preparing dinner. I mean, our grandparents knew what they were doing when they ate meat and 3 veg, right? It wasn't much more complicated than that. They weren't eating, heaps and heaps of carbs, cheap carbs like pizza and focaccia and bagels, unless you're Jewish, I guess. But, it was a pretty solid diet, and only up until recently our grandparents didn't eat breakfast cereal for breakfast. They ate protein and fat. They'd eat a sausage or something like that, or an egg, and they sort of knew how to give themselves the right kind of energy. And it's a really interesting story. I don't know if you know this story, Joe, but breakfast cereal that we all take for granted these days, especially in America. I mean, those supermarket aisles. I used to live in Santa Cruz, and I remember going to the supermarket for the first time just going, oh my God, look at this. It was like this Technicolor array of junky, cheap, carby flakes, with sugar. It started when these 2 brothers, the Kellogg's brothers, one of them was a psychiatrist, and he was working, I kid you not, with sex addicts who were in a clinic. And he decided that if you gave them just flakes of oats or corn or whatever for breakfast, it dampened their sex drive. So breakfast cereal developed as a way to cure sex addiction. I kid you not. Now, his brother was a marketer and came along and said, hey, if we add sugar to this, people will like it even more and we can market it. Great idea. Cheap, cheap food. So Mr. Kellogg's, the marketing guy, came along and did this, but his brother didn't like it. He was a doctor and he went, no, I don't like the idea of all this sugar. It's actually going to make people really sick. So he went separately and started up his own brand called Sanitarium. Do you have the brand Sanitarium in the US?
No.
We do in the UK and Australia. So that's considered the healthier version of Kellogg's, right? And they do similar breakfast cereals, but with less sugar. And I think the Seventh-day Adventists ended up owning it. Weird story. But these assumptions about, you're meant to eat cereal for breakfast, it was all a marketing ploy and with a very funny story.
Yeah, so we get rid of the cereal and we'll have a baby boom.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be rampantly having sex, apparently. I don't think that's likely to happen, but yeah.
So you did that. You hopefully got tons and tons of people off sugar, right? That was wildly successful, that program. Mm-hmm. And then you threw it what'd you do? You threw it away and you focus now on traveling the world?
Sort of. I shut down the business and I shut down the 8-week program. So I had a digital program where you could sign up and millions signed up for it. And you would get, menu plans and so on for 8 weeks. And we had doctors and health experts that handheld you through the experience. And I shut it down in May 2018 and sold off the assets and gave it all to charity. So I continue to sell my ebooks and also a recommendations tick. So certain supermarket products pay me to have my tick of approval on their products. So if it's a genuinely low sugar product and it's good for people quitting sugar. And that still runs, but 100% of that goes to charity projects that I run. So you're right, I did that. And now what I do is I focus, obviously I'm not traveling too much at the moment for obvious reasons. But for 8 of the last 11 years, I lived on the road with one backpack and I traveled the world while running my business here in Australia. But I was in the US, I was in Greece, I was in Paris, and I basically investigated ways for us to be more responsible to the planet. So that's been my focus. And my most recent book, This One Wild and Precious Life, is all about that. It just came out in the States at the end of December.
That's pretty impressive. Not a lot of people could do that. Very hard to pivot in life, and certainly hard to part with your hard-earned money, but to give it away to charity and then go do something good and try to protect this world. That it is funny how most of us just don't get it. I heard a great thing. I'll go off topic for a second, but I heard a great thing on like BBC or NPR just yesterday about a group that is analyzing from satellite and radar deforestation and then pinpointing it so that as consumers, we could say, no, we're not buying products from farmland that was, where stuff was being grown in land that got deforested. And so there is technology, I guess, where we can come together. Maybe cancel culture is good in some ways, I guess, right? Where we could all stand together and say, hey, we got to do some good here. Yeah. Get rid of the bottles. Oh my God. We were at a wrestling tournament this weekend. My kids went through 30 plastic. It was ridiculous. It's so upsetting.
Oh, and I know, having lived in the US on and off, takeaway coffee cups, like the Starbucks cup, and they take 400 years to break down. And I just know it's part of the culture over there just to buy. I mean, I know here in Australia, we produce 2.4 million every day, disposable coffee cups going into landfill. And like the US, Australia also doesn't have proper recycling facilities. So China and various other countries that used to take our recycling have said, no, we're not doing it any longer. So it's all going to landfill. And we're ingesting the plastic. We're consuming a credit card size slab of plastic every week. Every week. Wow. We're absorbing it in our water, in the fish that we eat. Children are absorbing it. The impact is going to be terrible. So look, plastic's only the tip of the iceberg. The real thing is climate change, so the heating of the planet. And I mean, I could go off in all directions. And a lot of people say, Joe, like, how did you go from sugar? And in between, there was a book on anxiety, which was a New York Times bestseller in your country. And it's called First We Make the Beast Beautiful. It's a reframing of anxiety through sort of more of a helpful philosophical lens. And I sort of basically say that my anxiety is my superpower. I've used it to create stuff rather than curl up in a ball. And I show how I do that. But how did you go from there, from sugar to anxiety to the climate crisis and fragmentation and Trump and everything? And I'm like, it's all connected. It's all about not thinking. It's all about being sucked into, I hate to say it, a capitalist cycle where we, instead of just eating whole food and cooking, we buy packaged foods, and we think that Nestle is going to have the answer to us. And so all these brands now, of course, are pretending to go sugar-free. They're just finding a cheaper way to feed us crap. The solution is simply to cook, eat real food, cook, and don't waste any of it.
Problem is, because we're in that business, right? We're asking people to do hard things. We're asking people to wake up early, sweat, eat healthy, take cold showers. And the reality is people don't want to do that. They don't want to do it.
You've hit the nail on the head, Joe. We have a culture where discomfort is something we run from. If you think about all of our technology, right? I read something the other day that 80 to 90% of all technology invented in the last 30 years hasn't been geared towards solving world peace. It's been geared to eliminating discomfort. So we don't delay gratification. I mean, the Spartan stoic mentality, that was all about practicing resilience around discomfort, right? So the cold showers, all of that kind of thing. They have their health benefits, but one of the greatest benefits is the muscle building it does to get you geared up to dealing with discomfort, building up resilience to life's uncertainties, life's annoyances, life's pain, so that when the shit really happens, like when we, for instance, have a pandemic or we have a climate crisis where people are going to struggle to stay alive in the heat, we've got a capacity to endure. So we're like these little cocooned, delicate flowers who get outraged when we have to go through any kind of discomfort, when we have to go without. Our grandparents, once again, they were used to going without. They had rations during the war. They were taxed at certain times. I mean, the highest tax rate during the war years in the US was 94%. Can you imagine Americans putting up with that today? It's like, how dare you? Wearing face masks is deemed the biggest threat ever. And it's like, hang on, guys, that's just a small sacrifice to maybe help a few people out, I just you're absolutely right. There's a culture of not enduring hardship. And there's this sense that hardship is something that we shouldn't have to put up with. I say the opposite. Hardship, discomfort is a sign that we've got to get tougher, and is also a sign that we're probably on the wrong track and need to make some adjustments to our lives. It's a twofold thing. And I very, very much support that. And my book is a lot about different practices to build up that resilience. Like a warrior.
Well, you are a warrior. I love what you're doing. Let's get three tips. If you could, that doesn't have to be, it could be cutting out sugar. It could be saving yourself from a credit card worth of plastic a week. 3 things, because people, like stuff in bite-sized pieces, especially in America. It's got to be 7-minute abs. 3 things people should do every day.
All right. Well, cut out liquid sugar. So anything that's a liquid, you're cutting out a whole heap of sugar. And also liquid sugar goes to your liver super fast. You can drink 6 teaspoons of sugar in a minute. And that's what really causes your liver to freak out and store it as visceral fat. So cut out liquid sugar would be one thing. The other thing I would say is hike and walk. So if you can reduce the number of times you drive your car by simply walking, you will not only help save carbon emissions, but you'll also be getting wonderful exercise. But on top of that, the mental health aspects, and I outline the science on it. So it's like a triple whammy. Just walk. And I would say the final one, which I live by, is don't go to the shops, because shopping begets shopping. A bit like eating carbs begets eating carbs. Just don't go to the shops and consume less. It's not about recycling anymore, because our recycling is going to landfill. Stop consuming every bit of plastic, every little thing. Repurpose everything in your wardrobe. Like, I'm wearing stuff from when I was 18. I'm now 47. That's how I've always lived, even when I was editing women's magazines. So I just don't go to the shops, and then you're not tempted, and you don't go up there looking for, I don't know, a new pair of sneakers coming home with a towel set. Like, just don't go there and what I do is I gamify it by seeing how long I can go. And I can go for 18 months without going to the shops.
Ladies and gentlemen out there that are listening and not watching, you need to get on this video, because Sarah Wilson, she looks like she's 18, and it's probably because she's not drinking sugar. She's walking everywhere, and she's wearing the same clothes from 20 years ago. That's the trick.
It is. You simplify your life and you create some beautiful, elegant flow, and then you get to truly live. That's my philosophy. I don't want to tell people something to do that's like painful, annoying. They're not going to enjoy it. You know, change comes about when we can show that the new way is more charming and fun than the old way.
You're awesome. You're charming. You're fun. I'm sorry I couldn't get your name Wilson correctly in the beginning, but
people know
awesome.
it now. Lovely to meet you, Joe. Good luck. Have a great evening.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by our friends Juliet and Kelly Starrett at The Ready State. Get a free trial and then save 10% for life by using the code SPARTAN10 when you register at thereadystate.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Tuesdays, you can find Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan, interviewing biohackers, business leaders, authors, and athletes. Thursdays and Saturdays, catch episodes from our DECA, Endurance, Trail, Combat, and La Ruta series. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time.